Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. So I've gotten all sorts of messages telling me about this first ever MEGAQUAKE advisory, which I didn't know that was even possible. But I guess it is. First ever MEGAQUAKE advisory for Japan, which is really interesting because that's how this year started out. You might remember on New Year's Day, there was a 7.6 magnitude earthquake, and it was actually the deadliest earthquake of the year. We're going to look at those numbers in a minute. It caused a small tsunami, and as you can see here on Interesting Engineering, it shifted the coastline of Japan by over 800 feet. So it was quite the earthquake and quite the way to start the year. But now here we are in August, and this is Associated Press. Japan's Kishida cancels Asia trip after scientists urge preparations for a possible megaquake, quote unquote. So that doesn't sound good. Okay. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida canceled a planned trip to Central Asia on Friday to lead the government's response after scientists urged people to prepare for a possible megaquake off the country's southern coast. The Japan Meteorological Agency issued its first ever, quote unquote, megaquake advisory. Okay, so for Japan, first ever, and it's the first that I've ever heard of for any country. I don't know. If you know of any other ones, let me know, but I've never heard of this before. On Thursday, warning of a possible future major earthquake triggered by the underwater Nankai Trough after a magnitude 7.1 quake shook just off the eastern coast of Kyushu Island earlier in the day. The trough, which runs along Japan's Pacific coast, was the source of past devastating earthquakes. Seismologists at the agency held an emergency meeting after Thursday's quake to analyze whether it had affected the nearby trough and reassess the risk of a major earthquake. They urged people to observe high caution levels for about a week. Okay, so I guess we can all watch over this next week what's going to happen with Japan. Is there going to be a mega quake? I guess we'll wait and see. But the risk is serious enough to where the Prime Minister came back to Japan and canceled his trip. It's making all sorts of news. And again, that's how this year started off. The deadliest earthquake of the year was that Japanese earthquake on New Year's Day. All right, Prime Minister Kishida, I've decided to stay in the country, at least for about a week, to make sure that government measures and communication are fully in place. The meteorological agency's first megaquake advisory sparked public unease, understandably so, and prompted local government offices, rail operators, and other agencies to begin introducing precautionary measures affecting holiday travelers during the summer Obon holiday week. Okay. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Let's hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I don't know if I have any Japanese viewers, not that I know of, but I do have this spreadsheet where I'm keeping track of earthquakes by year worldwide. This spreadsheet is called Signs Earthquakes, and this is how this year is looking so far. So when we compare it to last year, there haven't been as many earthquakes. We are now more than halfway through the year and still haven't had like half the number of earthquakes as what we saw last year for 2023. 2023, I'll point out, was the 5th deadliest year going back to 1985. I get all my information from Wikipedia. It's just the easiest way to do it. I don't know if there's some other database I can look at, but I think it's accurate enough for our purposes and for what I want to track. And so since 1985, last year was the deadliest because it saw that huge earthquake in Turkey and Syria, the one that split that Mount of Olives in two in Turkey. There was an olive grove on like a hill or a mount similar to what you see in Israel, and it split in two, just like what we expect at the second coming when Christ comes to the Mount of Olives, which I'm taking that as a big sign. That earthquake last year was the deadliest earthquake for that year, and it helped bring 2023 up to the number 5 spot for deadliest years for earthquakes. So far, the deadliest earthquake was the one in Japan that we've been talking about on New Year's Day. It killed 318 people. So that was the single deadliest earthquake this year. And then out of all deadly earthquakes, the number is 340. So just nothing compared to really the last few years. It is deadlier than 2020 and 2019. But anyway, the year's not done, and I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. And then over here to the right, I just want to point out so you can see the big picture. These are the deadliest years right here. So we just talked about 2023 right here. But then you have these two really big spikes. You have this one in 2004. This was from the Indonesian earthquake and tsunami. And then you have one in 2010. And that was the Haitian earthquake, both of which killed over 200,000 people. I've always been really interested in this one in 2004. The reason why is because in that year, during the April General Conference, at the time, Elder Dallin H. Oaks of the Quorum of the 12 spoke, and he may become the next president of the church. We'll have to see how that plays out. But either way, he's in the first presidency now, and he gave a talk called Preparation for the Second Coming. And what happened was he gave this talk, which was kind of an unusual talk. He gives like this list of signs of the times that the church should watch for. Let me just read that really quick. Biblical and modern prophecies give many signs of the second coming. These include 1, the fullness of the gospel restored and preached in all the world for a witness to all nations. 2, false Christs, plural, and false prophets, plural, deceiving many. Number 3, wars and rumors of wars, with nation rising against nation. Number 4, earthquakes in diverse places. 5, famine and pestilence. 6, an overflowing scourge, a desolating sickness covering the land. 7, iniquity abounding. 8, the whole earth in commotion. 9, men's hearts failing them. So I just think this is a really interesting list because it's very different from some of the other stuff that's put out there, where there's like all these complicated things that you have to look for, and there's like a specific timeline and so on and so forth. I don't buy into any of that. I go with what prophets and apostles say. And for President Oaks, this is what he says to look for. And we have seen all these things. We really have. But what happened was he gave this talk, and then later that year, the day after Christmas, that's when the earthquake near Indonesia struck and caused the tsunami, and it killed over 200,000 people. So, I see the two as being connected. He gave a warning, and then we had this huge event that took place. Okay, he also said some other interesting things in here. He says, these signs of the second coming are all around us and seem to be increasing in frequency and intensity. For example, now look what he's saying in 2004, and this hasn't even happened yet. These two huge spikes. You also have this year right here, 2008, had a lot of deaths, and then 2023. So before that, he says, these signs of the second coming are all around us and seem to be increasing in frequency and intensity. For example, the list of major earthquakes in the World Almanac and Book of Facts 2004 shows twice as many earthquakes in the decades of the 1980s and 1990s as in the two preceding decades. It also shows further sharp increases in the first several years of this century. The list of notable floods and tidal waves and the list of hurricanes, typhoons, and blizzards worldwide show similar increases in recent years. Yeah, they do. And I know that for myself because if you look down here, I have all these spreadsheets for signs. So I have, let's just talk about like natural disasters and things in nature. I have comets, meteors, asteroids, die-offs, derechos, earthquakes, hurricanes, lightning. And so I just have a bunch of stuff, and I've seen for myself that is true. It is true. Okay. Increases by comparison with 50 years ago can be dismissed as changes in reporting criteria, but the accelerating pattern of natural disasters in the last few decades is ominous. Yeah, and it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse since 2004. One of the things in particular that's gotten worse is, let's go to signs, wildfires. So here, let me zoom out. I'm tracking the largest or deadliest or most destructive wildfires in these different states, territories, provinces, countries. Okay. And this all really takes off. Guess in what year? 2004, when he gave this talk, starting with the Alaska. So Alaska had its single largest wildfire, the Taylor Complex Fire, as well as its worst wildfire season for the entire state in 2004. That was Alaska. That's a large area. Before this time, you have Wyoming, you have Australia with the what's called the Yellowstone fires of 1988. But everything else, and I've searched really hard, and I know that this is incomplete, but I have all the major places for wildfires, and it all starts in 2004. Since that time, all these different places have had their largest, deadliest, or most destructive wildfires. It's been a while since we've talked about this, really, but it's pretty stunning. So earthquakes, wildfires, I've seen it with hurricanes, volcanic activity has increased. It has increased. I have a spreadsheet for that, but anyway. And then later he says, while we are powerless to alter the fact of the second coming and unable to know its exact time, we can accelerate our own preparation and try to influence the preparation of those around us. A parable that contains an important and challenging teaching on this subject is the parable of the 10 virgins. Of this parable, the Lord said, "And at that day, when I shall come in my glory, shall the parable be fulfilled, which I spake concerning the 10 virgins." D&C 4556. Given in the 25th chapter of Matthew, this parable contrasts the circumstances of 5 foolish and 5 wise virgins. All 10 were invited to the wedding feast, but only half of them were prepared with oil in their lamps when the bridegroom came. The 5 who were prepared went into the marriage feast, and the door was shut. The 5 who had delayed their preparations came late. The door had been closed, and the Lord denied them entrance, saying, "I know you not." "Watch, therefore," the Savior concluded, "for you know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh." The arithmetic of this parable is chilling. The 10 virgins obviously represent members of Christ's church. Okay? Pay attention to this in case you didn't know. The 10 virgins represent the church. For all were invited to the wedding feast, and all knew what was required to be admitted when the bridegroom came, but only half were ready when he came. So, it is now 20 years since he gave this talk, and it's already been a really interesting year. There's a lot of things that have been pointing to this year, a lot of interesting numbers. Let's go back to this spreadsheet. So, looking at President Nelson, he is currently in his 7th year as president of the church. Okay. His first year began in 2018 on January 14th. So he started his first year. Right now, you see the numbers right here. Just go like this. He's in his 7th year in 2024. He is in his 100th year of life. So right now he's progressing through his 100th year, and he'll turn 100 years old on September 9th. So you have 7, 100. In April, before this general conference, he had given 40 talks. 40 is an important number in the scriptures. I'm not going to review that right now. And then 111 talks since he became an apostle. Okay. And then this is the year that him and President Oaks had their 40-year anniversary as apostles. They were called and sustained and set apart in 1984. So, and they both, pointed this fact out. They're like, this is a big year for us. It's our 40th year. So, as of, before April, 40 talks from President Nelson. And then during General Conference on April 7th, which was the Sunday sessions, that's when they hit their 40-year anniversary, the 7th of all days. And then it's 20 years since President Oaks gave this talk about the second coming, and it's probably going to become all the more significant if he becomes president of the church. It already is, because he's in the first presidency. But there's this thing with President Oaks and President Nelson being the heart surgeon, working on the heart of the church, and then President Oaks being the judge. Those are two really stunning symbols to go together in a pair. In April 2019, that's when President Nelson showed the picture of Paradise, California, which had burnt down by fire. And at the end of the talk, he said, "Time is running out." This was the year of the 2024 eclipse, which came about 7 years from the 2017 eclipse. And then we also happen to be in the solar maximum, or at least they think that we are, of solar cycle 25. And that's likely why we saw those auroras in May down here in the lower 48. So again, bring it back full circle. It doesn't really surprise me that there's a megaquake advisory for Japan. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen for sure. I just wouldn't be surprised. You know, as we watch earthquakes and wildfires and all the rest of this stuff and how things are shaping up, it's just, I wouldn't be surprised. And again, that's how this year started, was with this most deadly earthquake in the world for this year in Japan on New Year's Day. Pretty much every year that I've done this channel, and by the way, I'm recording this on August 9th, which is the 3-year anniversary of when I started my channel. So my channel is now 3 years old. It's been an amazing thing, by the way. But every year I've noticed that there's like usually some big thing that kind of like happens at the beginning of the year. So in 2022, it was that huge volcanic explosion off the coast of Tonga, which was the largest atmospheric explosion, including nuclear bombs, ever recorded by modern instruments. Okay? So ever since modern times, the largest atmospheric explosion was that volcano at the beginning of 2022. For 2023, it was the Mount of Olives. I'll pull it up. Turkish olive grove earthquake. People have like tried to like be like, "Oh, that's not a Mount of Olives." I know it's not the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, but this is in the same region of the world. And when you look at this and you look at this chasm, this is like a mount or a hill or whatever you want to call it. They're not really mountains, not when you compare it to like the Rocky Mountains. But it does look very similar to the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. And so when you have something like that split in two, and they even use the biblical language here, a verdant olive grove was cleaved in two, or cleaved in twain. I think this was a sign. So huge volcano 2022, Mount of Olives in Turkey, so just north of Israel, a Mount of Olives cleaved in twain. And then at the beginning of this year, 2024, you had the most deadly earthquake for the year on the first day of the year. So anyway, this is just a really interesting development. We'll have to wait and see if there is a megaquake, but it's coming at an interesting time. We're still waiting for this attack from Iran. So this is like the same time period, potentially the attack from Iran as well as this megaquake in Japan. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.